Welcome to Story Time. I am Reading Buddy. We bring you a story every week. Today, we are going to continue reading chapter 14 of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Oh, don't forget to stay until the very end and learn a Chinese phrase with Reading Buddy. Ready? Let's get started. Dorothy found herself riding easily between two of the biggest monkeys, one of them the king himself. They had made a chair of their hands and were careful not to hurt her.
Why do you have to obey the charm of the golden cap?
She asked.
That is a long story,
Answered the king with a winged laugh.
but as we have a long journey before us, I will pass the time by telling you about it if you wish.
I shall be glad to hear it.
She replied.
Once,
Began the leader.
we were a free people, living happily in the great forest, flying from tree to tree, eating nuts and fruit, and doing just as we pleased without calling anybody master. Perhaps some of us were rather too full of mischief at times, flying down to pull the tails of the animals that had no wings, chasing birds, and throwing nuts at the people who walked in the forest. But we were careless and happy and full of fun, and enjoyed every minute of the day. This was many years ago, long before Oz came out of the clouds to rule over this land. There lived here then, away at the north, a beautiful princess who was also a powerful sorceress. All her magic was used to help the people, and she was never known to hurt anyone who was good. Her name was Gaelet, and she lived in a handsome palace built from great blocks of ruby. Everyone loved her, but her greatest sorrow was that she could find no one to love in return, since all the men were much too stupid and ugly to mate with one so beautiful and wise. At last, however, she found a boy who was handsome and manly and wise beyond his years. Gaelet made up her mind that when he grew to be a man, she would make him her husband. So she took him to her ruby palace and used all her magic powers to make him as strong and good and lovely as any woman could wish. When he grew to manhood, Quilala, as he was called, was said to be the best and wisest man in all the land, while his manly beauty was so great that Gaelet loved him dearly, and hastened to make everything ready for the wedding. My grandfather was at that time the king of the winged monkeys, which lived in the forest near Gaelet's palace, and the old fellow loved a joke better than a good dinner. One day, just before the wedding, my grandfather was flying out with his band. When he saw Quilala walking beside the river, he was dressed in a rich costume of pink silk and purple velvet, and my grandfather thought he would see what he could do. At his word, the band flew down and seized Quilala, carried him in their arms until they were over the middle of the river, and then dropped him into the water. "Swim out, my fine fellow," cried my grandfather, "and see if the water has spotted your clothes." Quilala was much too wise not to swim, and he was not in the least spoiled by all his good fortune. He laughed when he came to the top of the water and swam to the shore. But when Gaelet came running out to him, she found his silks and velvet all ruined by the river. The princess was angry, and she knew, of course, who did it. She had all the winged monkeys brought before her, and she said at first that their wings should be tied and they should be treated as they had treated Quilala, and dropped him in the river. But my grandfather pleaded hard, for he knew the monkeys would drown in the river with their wings tied. And Quilala said a kind word for them also, so that Gaelet finally spared them, on condition that the winged monkeys should ever after do 3 times the bidding of the owner of the golden cap. This cap had been made for a wedding present to Quilala, and it is said to have cost the princess half her kingdom. Of course, my grandfather and all the other monkeys at once agreed to the condition, and that is how it happens that we are 3 times the slaves of the owner of the golden cap, whosoever he may be.
And what became of them?
Asked Dorothy, who had been greatly interested in the story.
Quilala being the first owner of the golden cap,
Replied the monkey.
he was the first to lay his wishes upon us, as his bride could not bear the sight of us. He called us all to him in the forest after he had married her, and ordered us always to keep where she could never again set eyes on the winged monkey, which we were glad to do, for we were all afraid of her. This was all we ever had to do until the golden cap fell into the hands of the wicked witch of the west, who made us slaves of the Winkies and afterward drive Oz himself out of the land of the west. Now the golden cap is yours, and 3 times you have the right to lay your wishes upon us.
As the Monkey King finished his story, Dorothy looked down and saw the green shining walls of the Emerald City before them. She wondered at the rapid flight of the monkeys, but was glad the journey was over. The strange creatures set the travelers down carefully before the gate of the city. The king bowed low to Dorothy and then flew swiftly away, followed by all his band.
That was a good ride,
Said the little girl.
Yes, and a quick way out of our troubles.
Replied the lion.
How lucky it was you brought away that wonderful cap.
In the story, Dorothy was flying in the air with the help of the winged monkeys. In today's Chinese time, Reading Buddy is going to teach you how to say fly in Chinese. 飞 飞 Thanks for listening. We will see you next time.